Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel Talks. Today we have with us Mr. Shishir Tripathi. And when we are sitting here on 25th June, we are remembered of the day when emergency was proclaimed in 1975. We'll ask Mr. Shishir what happened that day, what were the constitutional provisions under which the emergency was proclaimed, and what transpired after the emergency was over. What were the circumstances leading up to it? And we'll ask him some recommendations we can read, some documentaries we can watch about emergency. So, first of all, welcome, Shishir.
Thank you so much, Samapan, for getting me here and joining in for this conversation. Emergency, as we all know it in a common parlance, was basically a constitutional provision which was used to, I would say, abridge the fundamental rights of the citizens, to put the entire opposition of Indira Gandhi behind the prison, to curb the press freedom, and to stifle the democracy. So emergency was basically the darkest hour of Indian democracy by all means. It was imposed in 1975 on 25th of June by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. There were various reasons behind the imposition of emergency, as we all know. The fact of the matter was that Indira Gandhi proclaimed the emergency, giving the reason that there was internal disturbance. The reason for imposition of the emergency was internal disturbance, which was a very vague term then, and that term has been removed from the Constitution by the 44th Amendment Act, and now emergency cannot be imposed on the basis of internal disturbance, and there should be a clear indication of an armed rebellion or external aggression, which means that a country has waged a war on India. Then only the emergency can be imposed. But that time, this term internal disturbance was there in the constitution, and Indira Gandhi used it to impose the emergency. But as we all know, the reason behind imposing the emergency was not the security threat. The reason was political. Indira Gandhi, who was at that time the mightiest leader of India, and in the words of Congress chief at that time, D.K. Barua, Indira was India and India was Indira. She was that mighty. So basically, what happened, Samapan, was that in 1971, the Lok Sabha elections were held, and there was a veteran Samajwadi leader from Uttar Pradesh who used to fight election after election against Indira Gandhi. He had some differences, ideological differences with Indira Gandhi. So the leader name was Raj Narayan, and he used to be a vehement critique of Indira Gandhi policies, her dictatorial antecedents, and he was really critical of her. So he used to fight election after election against Indira Gandhi and used to lose all the elections. But in 1971, when he lost the election, he approached the Allahabad High Court and challenged the election of Indira Gandhi. So basically, what he did, he filed a petition challenging the Indira Gandhi election to the Lok Sabha on the basis of that she misused the state machinery for her personal election campaign. And to buttress his point, what he put forward, the proof he put forward was that Indira Gandhi's PA at that time, Mr. Kapoor, he was used by Indira Gandhi before his resignation as a government official was accepted by the president. He was used by Indira Gandhi to lead Indira Gandhi's campaign. So this was the reason that for which Raj Narayan challenged Indira Gandhi's election. And Allahabad High Court, there was this very famous judge, Justice Sinha. He gave a verdict which was shocker for everyone, including Indira Gandhi. And everyone actually, this was, if we have to be fair in the analysis of emergency, this was not a ground on which you can invalidate the election of a sitting prime minister. That's the misuse of the state machinery. That's a different point. We can argue about that differently. But the Allahabad High Court gave a verdict in which it barred Indira Gandhi from contesting the election for next 6 years. So obviously she was the mightiest leader. If she was disqualified as the member of Lok Sabha and she cannot even contest another election for 6 years, the Raj Sabha route was also closed. So if she does cease to be a member of both the houses, she has to give up the prime ministership. She didn't want. So she, on the advice of her coterie, she was her cabinet, kitchen cabinet, what was very famous at that time, which consisted of some very famous leaders. She appealed in the Supreme Court. She appeals in the Supreme Court, and there were a lot of churning and lot of events going on at that time. There was this student unrest and student movement going on in Gujarat, in Bihar. Jay Prakash Narayan, a stalwart of Indian politics who had retired, had come back and was leading this movement against Indira Gandhi, and there was complete chaos and unrest in the country. So, when the Supreme Court gave its verdict and upheld the Indira Gandhi's verdict, for which was given in the Allahabad High Court, there was no way Indira Gandhi could now supersede Supreme Court, because Supreme Court also said that she is disqualified on the basis of what Allahabad High Court has said, but gave us certain relief in a way that she said that she can be the member of parliament, but she cannot vote in the parliament. So again, this was a setback for Indira Gandhi, and on 25th of June, the Supreme Court verdict came on 24th of June, and on 25th of June, a massive rally was organized in Delhi's Ramlila Maidan, in which Jayaprakash Narayan was conducting a massive rally, and is a famous slogan from Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, lines from Ramdhari Singh Dinkar's poetry, "Ki सिंहासन खाली करो कि जनता आ रही है." He was claiming, he was rather invoking the police, the army, the students to go against Indira Gandhi, because according to him, the Supreme Court has ordered that she cannot be the prime minister of the condition, so of the country. So there was this complete situation of chaos at that time. So Indira Gandhi was left with no other option. She had to either step down as the prime minister or do something which could save her seat. So the only way she could have done that was to impose an emergency. Imposition of emergency was the only solution which she found, and as it's been chronicled in a lot of books, this was a suggestion which was made by her son Sanjay Gandhi. He was not in the favor of Indira Gandhi stepping down as a prime minister, and he suggested, let's impose an emergency. So this was briefly the entire thing what was happening at that time, and this was the reason why emergency was imposed.
Right, sir. So we generally save this question for the last, but can you recommend some books for our viewers which they can read, or some documentaries they can watch regarding emergency?
Definitely, Samapan, I can recommend you some very good books on the issue of emergency. The one book I personally like is by Bipin Chandra. It's called "In the Name of Democracy." So usually, what happens is that the majority of books, or majority of the writings that happened on emergency focused upon the Indira Gandhi's politics, what Indira Gandhi did, why she imposed an emergency. But this book by Bipin Chandra, "In the Name of Democracy," is divided into two parts. One is on JP movement and another is on emergency. So he holds JP as much responsible for the imposition of emergency as much he holds Indira Gandhi responsible for the emergency, because he says that JP, Jayaprakash Narayan, invoked, he kind of incited army, police, students, bureaucrats to go against Indira Gandhi. So this was a call for anarchy. It was in a way call for anarchy, but he was critical of JP also, JP movement also, and at the same time critical of the emergency also. So "In the Name of Democracy" by Bipin Chandra is a very good book which you can read. The second book which I would like to recommend is this book. This is called "The Emergency: A Personal History" by Kumi Kapoor. This book is very interesting because it is indeed a personal history, because Kumi Kapoor was a veteran journalist with she's a veteran journalist, and that time she was a young reporter. who was covering Municipal Corporation of Delhi. And she was also politically linked because her sister was married to Subramaniam Swamy. So she had political connection also. She was, as a reporter and somebody who is also having a connection with politics, had a ringside view of the entire events. So this is one book by Kumi Kapoor which everyone should read. The third book which I would like to recommend, it's not on emergency, it's a constitutional history of post-independent India. It's by American historian Granville Austin, and he wrote this book which chronicles the events, the constitutional development in 1991. And this book has a beautiful chapter on emergency, which is titled as the autumn, which is titled as 26th June 1975, the day emergency was imposed. And he dwells into the constitutional angle of the entire emergency, why there was constitutional crisis, what happened in the Allahabad High Court, what happened in the Supreme Court. He chronicles all this very beautifully and also had a lot of insider details in this book. So this is again a very important book which one can read. The fourth book which I would like to recommend is by this. Obviously, everyone knows about this book. It's India After Gandhi by Ramchand Guha. The chapter which chronicles the emergency period is called the Autumn of the Matriarch. So obviously, you understand what does this mean. So
Right.
it talks about a lot of anecdotes. It talks about a lot of insider facts in this book that what happened during emergency period. So these are the four books which I recommend. And as for the series is concerned, I have come across only one series or documentary, as you said. There is a beautiful and very well made documentary called Pradhan Mantri, which was hosted by Shekhar Kapoor. So it has got two episodes on emergency. I think it's an easy watch, and you can watch it to get a quick information of what happened in emergency.
Uh, Shishir, thank you so much for telling us about all these wonderful books. I want to ask you this. Now, this year we are celebrating 75 years of independence. We are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav.
Yeah.
Can this crisis in 1975 be called the biggest setback to Indian democracy or the biggest constitutional crisis that has ever happened?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you look back, this was one period, the emergency period that lasted for 21 months. This was a period when the entire opposition was put behind the bar. Almost all the leaders of opposition had to spend that entire emergency period behind the bars. There were leader who was kept in solitary confinement for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. The press freedom was completely curtailed. Nobody could write. I mean, there were newspapers which published the open, the completely empty editorial space to register their resentment. I will tell you that in Times of India Bombay edition, a very novel way of expressing the dissent was used, where an obituary was published which read that D.M. O'Cressy, beloved husband of truth, loving father of liberty, brother of faith, hope, and justicia, expired on June 26th. So basically, the intent behind this obituary was to put across the resentment against this regime. Indira Gandhi's regime, which was effectuating the emergency. So, and then you see that even judiciary was subverted. What happened before 1975? The Supreme Court gives Keshavananda Bharati judgment, the landmark judgment, which you must be also aware of. In that judgment, they enunciate the basic structure doctrine, which says that no amendment can take away the basic constitutional and fundamental rights, which alters the basic structure of the constitution. You cannot put across, you cannot initiate an amendment which takes away the basic structure of the constitution. All the judges who were in favor of this basic structure were superseded for the first time. They were superseded, and a much junior judge was made the Supreme Court Chief Justice of India. So judiciary was subverted. There was a press censorship. The opposition was behind the bars. There was forced sterilization, which was part of Indira Gandhi's 20 PowerPoint program. So there was forced sterilization going on. There was complete anarchy all over the place. Anarchy, not in the sense that people were fighting and killing on the roads, but anarchy in the sense that democratic values were completely thrown to the bin. So this was indeed the darkest phase of Indian democracy. And when we look back, we realize that due to the Supreme Court intervention, there have been ample safeguards now, so that such thing is not cannot be repeated again.
Uh, when you say that this was the darkest period in our constitutional history, and when we look across many countries which started with us, which started their journey with India, they have not been able to maintain a democratic state. And the situation, as you have just told us, were very bleak in 1975. So what was that X factor with India, with which is still continuing and has made us a democratic state, and we are thriving in that democratic atmosphere?
That's a very valid and beautiful question, Samarpan. Actually, you see, at the end of the day, Indira Gandhi was daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru. I mean,
Right.
we all have to accept the fact that he was one of the biggest leaders of independent India. He was a big Democrat himself. So obviously, she had the genes of Jawaharlal Nehru, who was a statesman par excellence. He was a great supporter of democracy. He believed in liberalism. So ultimately, the fact remains that Indira Gandhi herself chose to withdraw the democracy, withdraw the emergency, and reestablish the democracy. So when we look back, we realize that there is something very peculiar about Indian polity. Our people are very mature in that sense. So you see that Indira Gandhi imposed emergency, and then when she calls it off and she goes for an election, because there are some people in her kitchen cabinet and court to suggest that you will win the election. People of India at that time, the literacy was very high. Still, the same people shows her the way. They make her realize that she did wrong and she loses the election. Then Janta government forms, and this government basically, which was an aggregation of the opposition parties which had come together against Indira Gandhi, just falls like the house of cards in 2 years. Their only reason for coming together was Indira Gandhi, and when Indira Gandhi loses the election, that cementing force just collapses and the government collapses. People again choose Indira Gandhi. They punished her and then they chose her back because they realized that she's still a leader who can give a decisive government. So this is the maturity of the Indian republic and the Indian public. And as for, I always say that Indira Gandhi could have chosen not to withdraw that emergency. She could have gone with it for 2 years, 3 years, and India would have ended up into a totalitarian state. But she chose because she had the genes of Jawaharlal Nehru. That's what I feel. So, and I also feel that Indian public, the populace, have this very strong understanding of democratic functioning of the state, and they know how to deal with an autocrat. So I think that's why we thrive with democracy, and you see that election after election, Indian people have elected and re-elected, sometimes rejected the incumbent governments. So they have shown that they have a very mature mindset to select their leaders.
Shishir, can it be said that when emergency was proclaimed and Indira Gandhi loses the election, it actually strengthened the democracy in that sense that any future leader did not do that misadventure?
Of course, Samapan, that was losing of Indira Gandhi, the mightiest leader of that time, was a clear indication that Indian public cannot be subverted. Indian democracy cannot be subverted. You cannot take for granted Indian democracy. You cannot take for granted the Indian people. They are very mature in that sense. Why no other leader could do that? Obviously, you know that after the decline of Congress system, what we call Congress system, the one party dominance, for a long period we had a very fractured mandate. No one party became the all powerful or got an absolute mandate till 2014. Obviously, after the death of Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi got the sympathy vote. It was a wave. He won massive seats in the Lok Sabha, and he formed a very stable and a very firm government. But obviously, in the next election, he lost it. But after that, we see that it's an era of what we call coalition politics. Then there was no one leader who could manage to get that much of seats that they could have even tried for what Indira Gandhi did. Now we come to 2014, where Narendra Modi government gets an absolute majority, and you think it's been the two terms Narendra Modi, which was touted as a dictator, as a totalitarian leader, has respected democracy. Opposition cry falls when they lose the election, but they don't stress on the fact that they win elections. Today, Congress has won so many elections. They have a government in Chhattisgarh, they have government, AAP has government in Punjab, Congress has government in
Recently, the one in Karnataka.
Karnataka, they recently won. Before that, they won Himachal. So democracy is fully vibrant. It's working. So I don't think so. I think that Indira Gandhi was an aberration. That was not a norm. Indira Gandhi was an aberration that was completely something which was not intrinsic to the Indian polity, Indian mentality. She did commit a mistake. She realized, and she had to pay the price. But I feel very strongly that when it comes to the norm, Indian people love democracy, they adore democracy, and they'll also always go for a leader who respect democracy, and that is why they chose Narendra Modi twice with absolute majority.
And this is what our PM says, that we are the mother of democracy.
Of course, we are the mother of democracy. You just think when India got independence, we were a country of. I mean, we had a huge illiteracy. I mean, huge illiteracy. Hardly 20% of
Churchill
the.
famously said that.
Yeah, please tell me.
Churchill famously said that India can't be a nation; it's just
Yeah.
a piece of land.
Yeah, of course.
And we
But
proved him wrong.
we proved Churchill wrong, and we not only survived as a democracy, we thrived as a democracy. Which now you can see that when Prime Minister Modi visited the USA, everyone is accepting the fact that India is a great democracy. So obviously, emergency was a dark phase of Indian history of post-independent history, but we survived that. We emerged much stronger from that.
Right. So I have so many questions to ask from you. There are so many incidents which happened, but one incident which stands out is Turkmani Gate scandal, which happened. People were thrown out of their house. A beautification drive was conducted. So can you tell something about that incident? And some we have heard from different sources that forced vasectomies took place. लोगों को ट्रेन से उतार के नसबंदी करा दी जाती थी. So how much truth is in that, and what transpired during that period?
See, this all was part of the Indira Gandhi's 20-point program, beautification of country, Delhi, and what you call, I mean, in common parlance, Nasbandi. This was all idea of Sanjay Gandhi. Sanjay Gandhi was basically a very hard-headed person, and he was in the reins of power at that time. He was actually someone who was controlling the entire power structure at that time. So there were a lot of things that happened that shouldn't have happened. First of all, that they were all fallout of the emergency. When emergency was imposed, it took away the fundamental right. There was a very prominent case that happened, and it went on to show that some fine judges stood against emergency. That case was called ADM Jabalpur versus Shivankant Shukla. So what happened in that case, that a person was picked up by the police, and he died in the police custody, and he couldn't be found. So the family of that person approached the court in under the habeas corpus writ petition, and it was said that yes, their fundamental rights were suspended. They cannot approach the court to for the enforcement of this particular right. But the Supreme Court, ironically, the majority of judges did give a favor in the government, but Justice Khanna stood up tall and he said, no, your right to life and liberty cannot be suspended even in the time of emergency. So there were a lot of cases, there were a lot of things happened which should not happen in the democracy, but sadly that was the case.
Can you put some light on the role of Sanjay Gandhi and Rukhsana Sultana? I have come across her when I was reading about the emergency. Her name comes up many times. What was her role?
See, there are a lot of conjectures, Samarpan. Sanjay Gandhi obviously was the main person who was leading the country at that time of emergency. As far as the lady you are referring to, there are many anecdotes and there are many rumors, some settled facts about her. She was close-eyed of Indira Sanjay Gandhi, and she was leading this entire campaign of what you call in normal parlance, Nasbandi. She was carrying out that, and she was very close-eyed of Sanjay Gandhi. And there are many things attributed to her which we cannot verify. It's part of the conjecture.
All right. So, what safeguards do we have now in case in future somebody wants to take this misadventure and want to proclaim emergency? So, what steps we have taken legally to prevent that from happening again?
See, through 38 Amendment Act, which Indira Gandhi enacted, she took away the right of judicial review of the emergency, which was restored by the 44th Amendment. So she took away the right of judicial review of the emergency imposed, which is not the case now. So if an emergency, God forbid, is imposed, that can obviously be challenged in the Supreme Court of India. And now with the basic structure doctrine, Supreme Court is all powerful to, I mean, review any decision of the government. So with their one judgment, they can strike down the entire NJC Act, which was meant to replace the collegium system. You know about that. So Supreme Court is all powerful now. They can review every decision of the government. Uh, Secondly, now the emergency cannot be imposed under the vague term of internal disturbance. There should be a proper armed rebellion or there should be external aggression. And that too, when these two cases, God forbid, arise and emergency is imposed, then also Article 20 and 21 cannot be suspended. They will be there. So one has the right to approach to the court, one has the fundamental right to life and liberty. You cannot take away the right. So there are certain constitutional safeguards now that have been put in the place, and I don't think so that anybody can go get away with imposing such kind of emergency, not because that will come under the judicial review and Supreme Court would strike it down.
Right. I have one more question, and then we'll end this session. I have this question that whatever happened during emergency, was anybody brought to books for those atrocities which were happening in the name of whether beautification drive or in the name of vasectomy, population control? Was people brought to books for that?
You know, sadly, the worst part of emergency was that nobody was held liable for this. And in this, the worst part was played by the Indian judiciary. If you read this book, you will come across that how the entire cases of excesses, which was unleashed on people, were hushed up. The political leaders were not at all held guilty. So you have to understand that in this particular case, the Indian judiciary really let the people down. And there has been a documentation of the entire incidents in this book, and you should definitely read it. And anybody who wants to understand that how judiciary let down the people in this particular case should read this book.
All right, Shashir, thank you so much for your time. And I hope our viewers are feeling enriched from this conversation. They have come to know about what happened during emergency, why did it happen, and what has happened since the emergency took place. And I hope that they would definitely read the books you have recommended. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samarpan, for joining me. It was really an enriching experience for me too. We shall definitely join in for another episode of Talks where we will definitely discuss some other very important issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you.